They were called weird, awkward, loners, the kind of men other children avoided at school and other adults avoided at parties. Men who spent their weekends alone in flooded tunnels, hundreds of meters underground, doing something almost nobody else on Earth was willing to do. For most of their lives, that made them outsiders. Punchlines, losers. But in July of 2018, the world discovered something uncomfortable. The very things that made these men outcasts were the exact things that would let them do what 10,000 soldiers, engineers, and Navy SEALs could not. This is the story of the boys who shouldn't have survived, and the misfits who were the only ones who could save them. June 23rd, 2018, a Saturday afternoon. 12 boys, ages 11 to 16, finished soccer practice with their coach, 25-year-old Ekapal Chanawang. They call themselves the Wild Boars. And like teenage boys everywhere, they're looking for an adventure. They ride their bikes to Tam Luang, a cave system stretching more than 10 kilometers into the mountain. It's a popular spot. They've been before. They plan to be inside for less than an hour. None of them can swim particularly well. None of them are wearing anything but soccer cleats and shorts. And none of them know that at that exact moment, the sky above the mountain is beginning to change. Monsoon season in northern Thailand isn't gentle. It doesn't warn you. Within hours, the passage the boys walked in through is completely underwater. By nightfall, 13 people, 12 boys and their coach, are sealed inside a mountain, and no one outside knows that they're alive. Thai Navy SEALs arrive within a day. They are elite, disciplined, some of the best military divers in the world. They fail almost immediately, not because they aren't skilled, because the water in Tam Luang isn't like anything they've trained for. Zero visibility, ferocious currents, passages barely wide enough for a human body, silt so thick a diver can't see his own hand in front of his mask. 9 days pass. Oxygen levels inside the cave's air pockets begin to drop. Search teams pump over 1 billion liters of water out of the mountain, without success. 10,000 people, soldiers, engineers, volunteers from 100 government agencies, descend on this single stretch of jungle, and still nothing. No sign of the boys. No sign of the coach. Privately, rescue officials begin preparing the public for the worst. The United States military's own estimate. If even one of the 13 survives, it will be considered a success. The Thai government makes a decision that will change everything. They stop relying only on their own elite forces. They call in outsiders, civilians. And 2 of the men who answer that call have spent their entire lives being told they don't belong anywhere. Richard Stanton grew up the kind of child teachers describe carefully, in the way adults describe children they don't quite understand. Precise, solitary, more comfortable with maps and machinery than with other people. He became a firefighter, and on his days off, he did something almost no one else wanted to do. He crawled into flooded, pitch-black cave systems alone for fun. John Volantin was different, but the pattern was the same, an IT consultant by trade. Meticulous, the kind of man who color codes his equipment and rechecks it 3 times before every dive. Not out of anxiety, but because in his world, precision is the only thing standing between a person and death. Cave diving is, by most measures, the most dangerous recreational activity on Earth. And the psychological profile of the people who excel at it is strikingly consistent. Methodical to the point of obsession, comfortable in isolation, unbothered by silence, unmoved by fear that would paralyze most other people. In 2024, researchers Webb and Cloutier published a theory to describe this exact pattern. They call it the Rudolph effect, named deliberately for the story of the reindeer mocked for the very trait that would one day save Christmas. Their research examined a specific category of people, those pushed to the margins for traits society treats as deficits, obsessiveness, social awkwardness, discomfort with small talk, who go on to become indispensable specifically because of those traits, not in spite of them. Vernon Unsworth, a British caver who had explored Tam Luang for years and helped coordinate the rescue, put it more bluntly, describing the divers who arrived to help. They're an incredible bunch of people. Peculiar, yes. Socially awkward, yes. But when the chips are down, they're the ones you want. Think about that for a second. Who in your own life have you dismissed as strange? Too quiet, Too intense. Too obsessed with some niche thing nobody else cares about? What might they be capable of in the one moment that actually calls for exactly what they have? By the time the call came from Thailand, Stanton and Valentin weren't just experienced. They were, by consensus of the international caving community, among perhaps a dozen people alive who had any real chance of surviving Tam Luang's inner passages, let alone finding 13 people inside it. The Thai Navy SEALs did not fail for lack of courage. They failed because Tam Luang doesn't care how brave you are. The cave's narrowest choke points require a diver to remove their own air tank, push it ahead of them through a gap barely wider than their shoulders, and pull themselves through blind by feel, guided only by a guide rope. On July 6th, that cost a man his life. Saman Gunnan had retired from the SEALs years earlier. He volunteered anyway, delivering oxygen tanks deep into the cave system. On his way back out, he ran out of air in the darkness and drowned. He was posthumously promoted to lieutenant commander by King Rama X. His death became a turning point. Proof that raw courage and military training weren't enough. The cave demanded something else entirely. Thousands of hours of very specific, very strange experience that almost nobody on the SEAL team had, and almost nobody in the world had. That's when Thai officials made an unusual decision, one that would have been unthinkable a week earlier. They handed operational authority over the most dangerous phase of the rescue to a small group of civilian cave divers, amateurs by military standards, men with day jobs, men who, for most of their lives, had been told their obsession was a waste of time. On July 2nd, 9 days after the boys disappeared, Stanton and Valentin found them, alive, huddled on a muddy ledge, deep inside the mountain in the dark. "How many of you?" Valentin asked, his light finding 13 exhausted, hollow-eyed faces in the dark. 13. 13? Brilliant. For one moment, it seemed like the hardest part was over. It wasn't. Finding the boys and getting them out were two entirely different problems. None of them could dive. None of them could swim well. And the route back out ran through more than a kilometer of flooded, pitch-black, current-choked tunnel. The same tunnel that had already killed a trained Navy SEAL. A panicked child, thrashing underwater in total darkness, could drown himself and the diver holding him. Rescue planners considered leaving the boys inside for months, supplying them until the monsoon season ended. They considered teaching them to dive themselves. Both plans were deemed too dangerous. There was only one option left, and it had never been attempted on children in these conditions at this scale anywhere in the world. Australian anesthesiologist and cave diver Dr. Richard Harris was asked to sedate each boy with ketamine before every dive, repeatedly, over 3 days, to keep them from panicking underwater. If a child stopped breathing mid-tunnel, there would be no way to help him. If he woke up mid-dive and panicked, both diver and child could die. It wasn't a case of which is the best option. None of them were good. It was a case of, if we try this and it fails, that's what happens. Dr. Harris later said he was prepared to lose his medical license over the decision, and prepared for possibility that some or all of the boys might not survive it. He signed off anyway, because every other option was worse. On July 8th, the extraction began. Each boy was sedated, fitted with a full face mask, and handed to a single diver, a near-total stranger, who then guided him unconscious through more than a kilometer of flooded rock, alone in the dark for hours. John Valentin would later describe what it actually felt like to be the person holding that child's life in his hands. "I was fearful every second I held the boy underwater. Every second. I was terrified he would panic. There was no way to check a pulse mid-dive. No way to know, until they surfaced, whether the child in your arms was still alive. Day 1, 4 boys out alive. Day 2, 4 more. On day 3, the final 5, including the coach, made the same journey. 90 divers took part in total, 50 of them foreign volunteers, moving through passages so narrow that some had to remove their air tanks entirely and push them ahead by hand. 87 hours of GoPro footage were recorded by SEAL teams alone during the operation, most of it still unseen by the public. On July 10th, 2018, the last boy was pulled from the cave. All 13 were alive. Against odds that the U.S. military itself had rated as 1 in 13, every single person trapped inside Tam Luang came out alive. In the hospital, recovering, the boys sent a message to the world that would circulate for years. Don't worry, we're not afraid. We will be strong. The story became one of the most watched news events of the decade. Governments issued commendations. A film deal was announced within weeks. And then, almost as quickly as they had appeared, the divers went home. Richard Stanton went back to being a retired firefighter who dives caves on weekends. John Volantin went back to his IT consulting job. No parades, no talk shows. Mostly, they simply asked to be left alone. Asked whether he considered himself a hero, Stanton gave an answer that says more about him than any headline could. Are we heroes? No, we're not. We did the job we were trained for. We made a difference. That's enough. In the weeks that followed, a very different kind of attention arrived when a billionaire entrepreneur publicly floated an unsolicited engineering plan to rescue the boys, then, after it was rejected as impractical by the divers on the ground, lashed out publicly at one of them online. It's a strange footnote to the story. The loudest, most famous man involved in the rescue's aftermath wasn't one of the people who actually saved a single life inside that cave. The men who did the saving wanted nothing to do with the spotlight at all. So what actually saved those 13 lives? Not brute force. 10,000 personnel and the full weight of 100 government agencies had already tried that and failed. What saved them was a small handful of people who had spent their entire lives being told their obsession was pointless, that their discomforting crowds, their preference for silence, their strange devotion to crawling through flooded rock alone in the dark, that all of it made them lesser. Odd. Not quite right. The Rudolph effect isn't really about reindeer or even about cave divers specifically. It's about a pattern that shows up again and again in every field. The people society is quickest to dismiss are sometimes the only ones equipped for the one moment that actually matters. Vernon Unsworth said it plainly. Peculiar, yes. Socially awkward, yes. But when the chips are down, they're the ones you want. So here's a question worth sitting with. Who have you dismissed as weird or quiet or too intense about some strange hobby nobody else cares about? What might they be capable of in the one moment that actually calls for exactly what they have? 13 people went into a mountain and were saved by men the world had spent a lifetime looking past. Maybe the next Rudolph is sitting quietly in a room you're in right now. Subscribe to Mystery Cache for more stories of extraordinary people in impossible situations. Up next, the man who survived 36 days underground. Click here to watch.